This video is sponsored by Manscaped. I love their product, the Lawnmower 3.0. I made a whole video about it on my second personal YouTube channel, Zach Schambler. I recommend them. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code CLNS20, CLNS20 for 20% off of your purchases. I watched part 1 of the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary about Lance Armstrong, part 1 of 2. Part 2 comes out next weekend. And it was super interesting. I enjoyed it a ton. And way more. I enjoyed the Lance Armstrong 30 for 30 way more than I could have expected. I don't know. I've never really known anything about Lance Armstrong other than the 3 big hallmark obvious things about him, which are, number 1, he won a ton of championships in cycling. Number 2, I knew that he got testicular cancer at some point. There's the whole Live Strong campaign. And then number 3, I knew that Lance Armstrong got caught cheating and got caught doping. But my impression, even before I'd watched the documentary, was that, yeah, Lance Armstrong cheated. It's not good. But so was literally everybody else in cycling at that point. And so it seems true that the only way to win was cheating. And if you're going to cheat, you might as well win. I kind of a weird take. I know that's not, like, nobody likes cheating. But hey, if I'm cheating, the guy next to me is cheating, that guy's cheating. If all 7 of the top 7 guys are cheating, you might as well, hey, it comes down to who's better. It's less about the drugs and more about, hey, I have the drive to win. I think there's still, even though Lance Armstrong did dope and he did cheat, there's still some bit of talent or determination or something there that makes him a champion that I don't think is entirely fair to strip him away from. To say, like, he only won because of drugs isn't quite right. That's not quite true, because he still worked his butt off and still was clearly like a different kind of specimen when it came to racing. And I'll be honest, I enjoy listening to Lance Armstrong talk. His delivery is very authentic. He's very real. It's almost like talking to a friend. He's like very much refreshingly himself, not afraid to just be who he is. And it's a very amazing, the difference between Michael Jordan. We just watched The Last Dance and the Michael Jordan documentary. There's a big difference between the way Michael Jordan talks and the way that Lance Armstrong talks. Lance Armstrong isn't hiding anything. He's like, I am who I am. I own my faults. I'm not perfect. And, you know, where you watch The Last Dance documentary and Michael Jordan appears to be like constantly posturing. Like he like literally laughs at ideas of him potentially losing. And his ego's way more involved in The Last Dance. I think because Lance Armstrong's already been publicly humiliated, he's been embarrassed. He got tarnished. He got a lot of hate. And I think Lance Armstrong realized, you know what? I don't care anymore. He owns his good sides and his bad sides. And Lance Armstrong is very nuanced, which I enjoy. He's not all bad, and he's certainly not all good. And that's more honest. That's really what people are. And this documentary is such a strong contrast to The Last Dance, because the Lance 30 for 30 is a true documentary. It's not afraid of making Lance look bad. Nobody cares if they hurt Lance Armstrong's feelings. And it works because Lance owns up to his past, which makes it, he's like, yeah, I did do blah, blah, blah. I did do blah, blah, blah. And it works because of that. And it's really interesting. The show literally starts with him going, I am who I am. I take blah, blah, blah. And then he literally says, and my truth is the way I remember things. This might be biased. I don't mean to be. But hey, if I say something that someone else doesn't believe, it's, hey, I got facts wrong. It's how I remember things. And I love that they address that. They address bias right off the bat. Whereas, The Last Dance very clearly was biased, and no one talked about it other than Horace Grant yelling on the internet, other places. I don't know. And there's even a journalist who says at the very beginning, who says, we believe Lance is doing this to make his image look better. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. I think Lance kind of just was like, hey, if my story is going to get told, I might as well be a part of it and tell my side too. And it's very cool stuff. It's a story of a dude known for cheating. If you haven't watched the Lance Armstrong documentary, go watch it. It's a 2-part series. Part 1 is already out. And it's got so much less filter than The Last Dance had. And it's funny, when people talk about Michael Jordan, they kept using the term and the word competitor or competitive. And when people said Michael Jordan was competitive, it began to feel like a code word for jerk. But no one was willing to say that Michael Jordan was a jerk, so we'll say he's competitive. Where with Lance, nobody's got this affiliation, nobody's got this They're not afraid to say it, or it wasn't cut out. And the whole story is about kind of the price of chasing success. And even some of Lance's arrogance, I will say, seems more like ambition. There's a really interesting quote from Lance when he's like in his early 20s, and he says that, I'm saying like a lot. I'm trying to cut that out. Whatever, it's happening. Lance says, I'm not saying I will win every race in the world, but I can try. That's less arrogance and more a guy with ambition trying to go after and pursue a goal, trying to be the best he possibly can be. There was a point made, someone said that American cyclists are kind of weird, but there's a reason for that. In America, cycling is not a logical first choice. Kids would usually choose football or basketball or baseball or even soccer before you choose to pursue a sport like cycling, because to become a professional cyclist, you got to pour everything into it. And why would anyone choose cycling over the other major sports in America? So an American kid who chooses to do cycling as his major first sport is kind of an oddball, kind of a weird dude who doesn't quite fit in. One thing I learned in the documentary is that the Tour de France is 21 days. I knew it was a long race. I didn't realize 21 days of grueling, like a marathon every single day. And the way the Tour de France is talked about makes it sound like, honestly, you need drugs to do it. Like, I don't know how I could run a marathon every single day. No, the way that Lance cheated, he used a drug called EPO, which helps make red blood cells, which helps you get more oxygen and have a higher capacity to do aerobic activity like riding a bike. And it's wild how effective EPO was. The difference between first place and last place at the Tour de France is about 2%, 2 hours. If it's a 100-hour race and first place and last place are 2 hours difference between each other, there's about a 2% difference between first and last place. And the EPO can make you 10% better. So that's a massive jump, and you would want to use EPO if it makes you that much better. But cheating aside, Lance is still a cool story because he beat cancer, he came back and won, and it's clear he's a tough dude who fought hard and hated losing. There's some champion mentality to Lance Armstrong that, cheating aside, still is worth mentioning and noting. Now, there's another thing I didn't know, is that there's a thing called the Anti-Doping Agency. They're in Canada, and they help monitor and stop drug use in sports all over the world. And I'll be honest, I really thought this documentary was great. I'm excited for part 2. I want to hear more about Lance, the guy. Is he a good dad? Is he a good person? It's funny, on camera, his adoptive father took credit for being the reason why Lance had a champion mentality. And Lance's adopted father, I believe named, I think Howard Armstrong, kind of just elected to say, without being asked to say this, he said, without me being as hard on him as I was, he wouldn't have become the champion he is. And it's an odd thing to say. It's kind of dark to say, like, because he hasn't lived with him. It's not his biological dad. He hasn't seen him since he's like 15. And for that guy to say, I'm the reason Lance Armstrong made it, it's kind of dark and kind of twisted. And it makes me wonder, who is Lance now? How has he coped with all that? How is he as a dad? Is he better as a dad than his own father figures were to him? I don't know. There's a darkness, a lot of egos in the story of Lance Armstrong. And I just want to learn more in part 2. Aside from the fact that he's a super authentic, casual speaker, I don't know. I love his cut to the chase, no nonsense kind of delivery and storytelling. It's really, really cool. I can't recommend it enough. And I think Lance Armstrong is one of the more fascinating characters in the sports world. Clearly got an ego, clearly not perfect, but I like that he owns it.